God. I tell you, y'all, this album, and yes, I hear you. You're a Led Zeppelin fan. I listen to what you say. I've stopped doubting and stuff like that. The whole album experience is absolutely necessary. I get what you're saying, man. I hear you. It's very, very important. There are certain artists, I'm thinking of Floyd, I'm thinking of Zeppelin. You must hear it from beginning to end without interruptions, not bouncing from one song to another or stretched out over a period of weeks. Good exposure, but the true experience of it all from beginning to end. You're going to miss the feel, you're going to miss the journey, you're going to miss the emotional content, you're going to miss it all if you don't do the full album from beginning to end. Yes, I will do physical graffiti from beginning to end. I'm going to sit my ass down here, and I know it's going to take a decent 3.5 to 4 hours, because you know me, I got to do the review process, and I got to run my damn mouth. That's going to happen though, so beware, get ready. But this album, every album has its own unique feel and vibe to it. This album for me is the beginning of it all, the establishing of that rabbit hole, the haunting of Led Zeppelin. And again, I'm going back to it. Which of these songs on this album is your favorite? Which of these musicians, in your opinion, contributes the most to that haunting element? Now, each one of them has a unique way of playing, but when you put them together, damn, I'm telling you, there's just no denying how great they are. All right, I was raised on R&B, soul, rhythm and blues, hip hop, all of that shit. But even somebody like me, who's as remote and as distant and as far away from classic rock as you can be, you put this shit in front of me and you play this shit, you know I'm gonna feel it. You cannot sit and listen to Led Zeppelin, especially songs from this first album, without being haunted. What am I talking about? There are certain musicians, certain singers, players, when they play, when they perform, when they sing, the signature and the vibe that they create gets into you. It gets under your skin. It haunts you. Just a quick rant, if you don't mind, 30 seconds. Led Zeppelin comes on the scene. They present this. Your reaction is a couple of things. It's either holy shit. Everybody's reaction is that, guaranteed. This shit just punched me in the face. This shit just smacked me upside the head. Oh my God. That is the first reaction initially that you're gonna get. And then it's the next reaction of fear, because there's competition now. You can't deny the talent. You can't deny that they've got something going on. And now there's anger because you've discovered that they are their own men, they have their own minds, and that you are not going to be able to control them. So Led Zeppelin comes on the scene. I totally understand why. Some people just loved it. Some people hated them. Some people hated them because they couldn't control them. Some people hated them because they were better. Let's keep the shit real. I'm a musician, and I hear these guys come along the way. What's going to be my response? George Harrison opened up his arms. He said, holy shit, this is great. Befriended them, learned from them, contributed to their future projects. Other musicians, not so much. Some will say some shit like, no, I don't like them. I don't like anything they do. I don't like anything that they stand for. I don't like jealousy and fear. That's what that was. So when you're talking about Led Zeppelin 1, for me, this album created that haunting effect in full force. By the time I got past Led Zeppelin 1, and I was about to go into Led Zeppelin 2, I remember connecting to the album in that the songs on this album were the most haunting to me. And still to this day, Led Zeppelin 1 represents that haunting of the soul. You know what I'm talking about? So, man, yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Not so much a rant, but it's more a testimony of how I feel and how I view this first album, what it means to me. So I'm going to ask of you guys the exact same thing. What does this album mean to you? Give me a testimony. Well, let me give you a testimony in the coin of a paragraph. If you were writing me a paragraph, here is what I would probably write. I've discovered that Led Zeppelin is more than just a commercial machine of Stairway to Heaven and Black Dog and rock and roll and immigrant song. They have great diversity. What they've shown me is that not only can they create great, fantastic complementary sounds of the past from these great bluesmen and put them on high and have us reflect and remember them, but they have the ability to create their own sound, their own way, blaze their own trail. They're masters in every single arena. It's the diversity of what they create that I love the most, and the haunting feels of their fusion. That's something like that. That's what I would write. And I want the same testimony from you. And let me get raw on you. I got liquid courage because I've been sucking this sugarcane rum back all day. So I'm drunk with this shit. Let me get raw on your ass. If you have watched me for more than a couple of reactions, you owe me, right? You don't have to be a patron. You don't have to be even a subscriber from the very, very beginning, right? But you owe me at least a testimony, because you have been watching me probably for 2.5 years, going on to 3. And if you have watched me that long and you have not contributed to my channel in the capacity of even giving me a like or especially a testimony or a comment, that makes you, let's just say that I don't appreciate that. You owe me. So if you're watching me right now and you're listening to me and you're enjoying what I do and you have any kind of consideration towards me and what I provide, you owe me. So I want you, just one time alone, if you're not very comfortable with writing, if you're shy socially or whatever the case is, I don't care, because if you've watched me more than a few times and you appreciate my Led Zeppelin reactions and reviews, you owe me that much. Give me a testimony. That's all. Just write something and you don't ever have to do it again. I won't ask you ever again. But as a Led Zeppelin fan that I am now, and as a Led Zeppelin fan that you are, appreciating what I do, you owe me that at the very, very least. So write me a little testimony of what Led Zeppelin means to you, what especially this album means to you, in a sense of, yeah, man, this was the first album I listened to. When I listened to this, I got the feels of this impression. It doesn't matter if it is the same testimony from other people's or whatever the case is. This is just you personally, how you feel. But you owe me that, right? If you've watched me and if you've seen my reactions, especially dealing with Led Zeppelin, you at least owe me that shit. Like I said, you don't have to be a patron and you don't have to be a subscriber from the get. You know, let's talk about patrons. I've got 130 patrons. It fluctuates between 130 to 150. More than half of my patrons don't even request or recommend a reaction from me. Some do, and many do not. They're here just because they appreciate what I do and they want to show that support, you know, by helping me out financially, helping me pay for my Vimeo account and whatnot, right? But they are not asking anything of me in return, and that's cool. That's fine. Every single patron is different. Where it comes to the viewer who has watched me more than a couple of times, especially my Led Zeppelin reactions, I will never ask anything of you again except this one time. I want a testimony from you of what and how you feel about Led Zeppelin, especially this first album. If you were old enough and you were back in the day and you said, holy cow, here I was minding my own business one day, and a buddy of mine put on this LP. Where were you? Who were you with? How did it make you feel the first time? That's give me either a story like that, or give me a testimony of what they mean to you. Because let me tell you something, these guys are elemental. Whether you like them or you don't, whether you get the idea of what they are or you don't get the idea, you know for a fact that they are very, very elemental on the scene of music. So much so that they were just as influential in the 70s as the Beatles were in the 60s. Think of that, right? And anybody who says, well, they're not great, they're not this, they're not this, they're not that, that's fine, you have your opinion, but you know that you're wrong. Because if 1 million people could stand there and say, and then there's only 1 or 2 out of those 1 million people that says nay, 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 something is amiss here. I'm not saying that you have to forcibly like Led Zeppelin, but if you say something like, I don't like a single thing that they've ever done, and I don't like them just because they're too whatever, then I think that you're a liar, How could you not like a single song that Led Zeppelin has never done? I think that you're a damn liar. Anyway, I'm going off. Half of it is the sugarcane rum. The other half is me. But listen, I'm serious. I want you guys to give me a testimony. I don't care if you've been with me from the get. I don't care if you're brand new on the scene. If you are coming back for whatever the reason is, and you've seen more than one Led Zeppelin reaction from me, and you're deliberately coming to check out a Led Zeppelin from me 2 times, 3 times, whatever that qualifies, you owe me. Give me a testimony, all right? That's all I'm going to ask. Don't just sit there and watch me. There's 20,000 of you, right? So I want 20,000 testimonies. Don't write me a book, but write me a short paragraph, even 2 or 3 sentences. That's enough. I gave you an example too. So give me a testimony of why you like Led Zeppelin, what they mean to you, and especially this particular album. When you first heard it, I'm assuming it's the first that you've heard from Led Zeppelin. Give me your account of how you felt, right? So let's do this. Liquid Courage, you gotta love it. Led Zeppelin, debut album. Let's go into the review portion right now. And this is my point break to let me know, in case this doesn't make it onto YouTube, I'll split it in the middle right here, and it'll give it a better chance the next time around. All right, let's review this, man. Wikipedia. I gotta stop drinking this stuff. Sober up a little bit. One more sip. You guys gotta try some Applebee's sugarcane rum. Alright, Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin is the debut album by English rock band Led Zeppelin. It was released on the 12th of January in '69 in the US and on the 31st of March in the UK by Atlantic Records. The album was recorded in September and October of '68 at Olympic Studios in London, shortly after the band's formation. It contains a mix of original material worked out in the first rehearsals and remakes and rearrangements of contemporary blues and folk songs. The sessions took place before the group had secured a recording contract and totaled 36 hours. They were paid for directly by Jimmy Page, the group's founder, leader, and guitarist, and Led Zeppelin's manager, Peter Grant, and cost £1,782, equivalent to $29,546 in 2019. They were produced by Page, who was a musician who as a musician was joined by band members Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham. Percussionist Viram Jasani appears as a guest on one track. The tracks were mixed by Page's childhood friend Glenn Johns, and the iconic album cover showing the Hindenburg disaster was designed by George Hardy. Led Zeppelin showed in the group's fusion of blues and rock and their take on the emerging hard rock sound was immediately commercially successful in both the UK and US, reaching the top 10 on album charts in both countries as well as several others, while it reached number 1 in Spain's albums chart. Many of the songs were longer and not well suited to be released as singles for radio airplay, and Page was reluctant to release singles, so only one single was released, Good Times, Bad Times, backed with Communication Breakdown. I never knew that. I believe on the second album, the only single was Whole Lotta Love, wasn't it? And on the back side, it was Thank You, was it? Correct me if I'm wrong. However, due to exposure on album-oriented rock radio stations and growth in popularity of the band, many of the album's songs have become classic rock radio staples, despite their length. It's funny, I had a crazy-ass thought just recently. Have you guys heard about the Justice League Snyder Cut? And for the longest time, the fan base was saying, release the Snyder Cut, release the Snyder Cut. So the Snyder Cut, after lots and lots of fan pressure, it was released. And it was 4 hours long, man. And the Justice League fan, the comic book fan, the Snyder fans didn't care. They had what they asked for, and they just enveloped that thing, you know? So I'm thinking about the length of Led Zeppelin songs, you know, and despite the length of the songs, the greatness of the song could not be denied. And so radio stations had to finally, you know, find a way to make it happen. You know what I mean? Sorry, I just had that random thought come to me. You guys, let me know if you know what the hell I'm talking about. Background. In July of '68, the English rock band The Yardbirds disbanded after 2 founding members, Keith Relf and Jim McCarty, quit the group, with a third, Chris Dreja, leaving to become a photographer shortly afterwards. Yeah, you know, I guess not everyone is meant to go down a certain road. It's the road less traveled. And I mentioned this about Jimmy Page. He definitely had a forward-looking vision. He was convicted. And I think that at some point, maybe he already knew that, well, he probably knew that he wanted to get into the heavier sound, sounding like the Creams and the Hendrix, you know? It wasn't as prevalent and it was untested still, but that's where he was going. Whereas Keith Relf and Jim McCarty, I believe that they wanted to go down more the folk rock route, more following after the likes of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, you know? And definitely there was more of a platform for that particular road. Now, Page, interestingly, he could have gone down any road that he wanted to choose, because we know that he's very gifted in the way of doing acoustics and folksy and all that stuff. He would have enjoyed success that way. That would have been a safe road to travel down, but no, he decided he's going to go down this road. I've mentioned it before. I think that was a very brave venture on his part, and somebody who really knows himself, somebody who's really convicted and really confident in their abilities. That is what it takes to travel down a road like that at the time. The fourth member, guitarist Jimmy Page, was left with rights to the name and contractual obligations for a series of concerts in Scandinavia. Page asked seasoned session player and arranger John Paul Jones to join as bassist and hoped to recruit Terry Reid as singer and Procol Harum's B.J. Wilson as drummer. Wilson was still committed to Procol Harum, and Reid declined to join, but recommended Robert Plant, who met with Page at his boathouse in Pangbourne, Berkshire, in August to talk about music and work on new material. So yeah, that was in 68. Okay. So Page was moving quickly here. So the band disbanded in July, and by August he already had John Paul Jones and Robert Plant lined up. Page and Plant realized they had good musical chemistry together, and Plant asked friend and former bandmate John Bonham to drum for the new group. The lineup of Page, Plant, Jones, and Bonham first rehearsed on the 19th of August in 68. Not wasting any time at all. He is a fast mover, let me tell you. The day before Plant's 20th birthday. So Plant's birthday is on the 20th, okay. Shortly before a tour of Scandinavia as the new Yardbirds, performing some old Yardbirds material as well as new songs such as Communication Breakdown, I Can't Quit You Baby, You Shook Me, Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, and How Many More Times. Yeah, great, man. Coming in with a lot of their own stuff. After they returned to London, following the tour, Page changed the band's name to Led Zeppelin. Sorry, I'm suffering now. I'm drinking too much of this stuff. And the group entered Olympic Studios at 11 p.m. on the 25th of September in 68 to record their debut album. 11 p.m. That was the only time they had in the studio, I imagine. They were probably there all night. Recording. Page said the album took only about 36 hours of studio time over a span of a few weeks to create, including mixing, adding that he knew this because of the amount charged on the studio bill. One of the primary reasons for the short recording time was that the material selected for the album had been well rehearsed and pre-arranged by the band on the Scandinavian tour. Really, really good. See? These guys were going from the Yardbirds into the new Yardbirds. They hit the European circuit, became notable, established a following, came back to Europe, went straight into the studio and released an album. So they were on top from the very get. They were taking the advantage of the Yardbird platform that was already established, re-establishing themselves in their own rights while they're on the circuit, getting that fan base going, and then going straight into the studio and releasing an album immediately. So they were on top from the very get, you know? Wow. Great, great history here. The band had not yet signed a deal, and there was no record company money to waste on excessive studio time. Page and Led Zeppelin's manager, Peter Grant, paid for the sessions themselves. Yeah, see? Page and Grant knew exactly what they were doing, where they were going, had so much conviction that they basically put that money out themselves. And back then, it's the equivalent of like $30,000, man. The self-funding was important because it meant they could record exactly what they wanted without record company interference. There's the rub. Doing exactly what they wanted to do. If they had signed with anyone else that didn't give them creative freedom, the sound of Led Zeppelin would have been really, really diluted, and it might not have sounded like the Led Zeppelin that we know. Could you imagine? So not only is this guy Page bold and brave, but he's very, very smart. He has been around long enough to watch and pay attention, and he plotted a course of how to navigate through all of this stuff and how to get that unique sound that he wanted to create to us. It takes some very, very smart planning and a very forward-looking individual, man. For the recordings, Page played a psychedelically painted Fender Telecaster, a gift from friend Jeff Beck after Page recommended him to join the Yardbirds in 65, replacing Eric Clapton on lead guitar. Production. Led Zeppelin was produced by Page and engineered by Glenn Johns, who had known each other since they were teens in the suburb of Epsom. According to Page, most of the album was recorded live, with overdubs added later. Page used a distance makes depth approach to production. He used natural room ambience to enhance the reverb and recording texture on the record, demonstrating the innovations in sound recording he had learned during his session days. At the time, most music producers placed microphones directly in front of the amplifiers and drums. For Led Zeppelin, Page developed the idea of placing an additional microphone some distance from the amp, as far as 20 feet, and then recording the balance between the two. Page became one of the first producers to record a band's ambient sound, the distance of a note's time lag from one end of the room to the other. That's what we were hearing when they were going back and forth with the vocals and the guitar there at the end of You Shook Me. Because of the live recording, some songs had Plant's vocals bleed onto other tracks. Page later stated that this was a natural product of Plant's powerful voice, but added the leakage sounds intentional. On You Shook Me, Page used the reverse echo technique. It involves hearing the echo before the main sound instead of after it, and is achieved by turning the tape over and recording the echo on a spare track, then turning the tape back over again to get the echo preceding the signal. Wow, man. Let me tell you, this literally took the commitment of a second life, just to be able to create all of these things and to put this stuff together. It took could you imagine if Page didn't have these production skills and they had to try and pay somebody to do it? Led Zeppelin might not have come about. This was one of the first albums to be released in stereo only. Prior to this, albums had been released in separate mono and stereo versions. Okay, it's interesting. One of the first albums to be released in stereo. Composition. The songs on Led Zeppelin came from the first group of rehearsals, which were then refined on the Scandinavian tour. The group were familiar with the material when they entered into the Olympic studios to start recording, a reason the album was completed so quickly. Plant participated in songwriting, but was not given credit because of unexpired contractual obligations to CBS Records. He was retroactively given credit on Good Times, Bad Times, Your Time Is Gonna Come, Communication Breakdown, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, and How Many More Times. Writing at a very young age, man, 19, 20 years old. Unreleased material. Two other songs from the Olympic sessions, Baby Come On Home and Sugar Mama, were left off the album. They were released on the 2015 reissue of the retrospective album Coda. I've said it back then and I'm saying it now. If Baby Come On Home had been released back in the day, that would have been a huge, huge hit. A huge hit, let me tell you. It's as if it's, and sorry for the comparison, I hear, like back then, Aretha Franklin was really popping with Natural Woman. You played this song in and around that period of time, it would have gotten that big of a boom. Really, I think, and Natural Woman is it her biggest hit? But anyway, I sometimes feel that Page in his early youthful vocal delivery could rival that of Aretha Franklin, if not surpass her. Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? So don't hate me for what I just said. But his range back then were unmatched by everybody else. You know that I'm right? Even the likes of Aretha. As much as I love Aretha, I think that Page could sing Natural Woman and she could sing Baby Come On Home. But of course, between the two, Page is the better singer, mainly because of the range that he could reach and the emotions that he could really, really lean into. Sorry for saying it, but I just said it. I can't take it back. I won't. Artwork. The image of the Hindenburg airship seconds after catching fire on the 6th of May, 1937, was used as the Led Zeppelin album cover. Led Zeppelin's front cover, which was chosen by Page, features a black and white image of the birding Hindenburg airship photographed by Sam Shear on the 6th of May 1937 during the Hindenburg disaster. The image refers to the origin of the band's name itself. When Page, Beck, and The Who's Keith Moon and John Entwistle were discussing the idea of forming a group, Moon joked, quote, "It would probably go over like a lead balloon." And Entwistle reportedly replied, "Yeah, like a Led Zeppelin." The back cover features a photograph of the band taken by Drea. The entire design of the album sleeve was coordinated by George Hardy, with whom the band would continue to collaborate for future sleeves. Hardy himself also created the front cover illustration, rendering the famous original black and white photograph in ink using a rapidograph, technical pen, and mezzotint technique. Hardy recalled that he originally offered the band a design based on an old club sign in San Francisco, a multi-sequential image of a Zeppelin airship up in the clouds. Page declined though, but it was retained as the logo for the back cover of Led Zeppelin's first two albums and a number of early press advertisements. The first UK pressing featured the band name and the Atlantic logo in turquoise, when it was switched to the orange print later that year. The turquoise printed sleeve became a collector's item. Who's got the turquoise printed sleeve? Let me know. The album cover gained further widespread attention when, at a February 1970 gig in Copenhagen, the band were billed as the Knobs, as the result of a legal threat from aristocrat Eva von Zeppelin, a relative of the creator of the Zeppelin aircraft. Von Zeppelin, upon seeing the logo of the Hindenburg crashing in flame, threatened legal action over the concert taking place. In 2001, Greg Koch wrote in Rolling Stone that, quote, "The cover of Led Zeppelin shows the Hindenburg airship in all its phallic glory going down in flames. The image did a pretty good job of encapsulating the music inside, sex, catastrophe, and things blowing up," unquote. This is a very, holy cow, there's a lot more to read here. Okay, I'm going to jump around. I'm going to skip over a whole bunch of what the critics are saying, and because there's just so much body here where it comes to critical reception and legacy. But I won't be reading much longer. Let's read about another 2 or 3 paragraphs. This is good stuff though, isn't it? This is good history, man. Rock journalist Cameron Crowe noted years later, "It was a time of supergroups, a furiously hyped band who could barely cut it, and Led Zeppelin initially found themselves fighting upstream to prove their authenticity." Yeah, I can see that. Lots and lots of competition. And then these guys came through, and maybe first take was like, "Who the hell are you guys, you know? You're going to pit her out. You're not going to make it to your second album. Okay, you made it to your second. You're not going to make it to your third," you know? Kind of like that. So I can see that upstream fight. And Rolling Stone being probably at the head of that spear trying to keep them down. Despite shaky press, the album is now considered by some of their fans to be one of the group's best albums. Absolutely. I would put Led Zeppelin 1 in my top 5, easily. My favorite Led Zeppelin album is Led Zeppelin 2, absolutely. But yeah, Led Zeppelin 1, oh man, for sure in my top 5. I haven't actually thought about specific rankings, but definitely in my top 5. And for me, it's Led Zeppelin 2. However, press reaction to the album was not entirely negative. In Britain, the album received a glowing review in Melody Maker. Chris Welsh wrote in a review titled, "Jimmy Page Triumph. Led Zeppelin is a gas. Their material does not rely on obvious blues riffs, although when they do play them, they avoid the emaciated feebleness of most so-called British blues bands. In Oz, Felix Dennis regarded it as one of those rare albums that defies immediate classification or description, simply because it's so obviously a turning point in rock music that only time proves capable of shifting it into eventual perspective. Ah, you see, many people didn't know what to make of these guys. What is that sound? Do I like it? Do I don't? Of course I like it, but I can't really put it in a category. Was heavy metal a coined phrase at that point? Probably hard rock, but at the same time too, all they had back then was the likes of Hendrix and Cream and maybe just a few others to compare to. So it's something that probably a lot of people might have been reluctant to embrace, but you can't deny, hey man, this sound is very, very interesting. Is this where a lot of parents were like saying, no, don't listen to that shit? In comparing the record to their follow-up Led Zeppelin 2, Robert Christgau, let's skip this paragraph completely. I do not read anything this fool has to say. Let's go to the next paragraph. To hell with that guy. The album was a commercial success. It was initially released in the US on the 12th of January in '69 to capitalize on the band's first North American concert tour. Before that, Atlantic Records had distributed a few hundred advanced white label copies to key radio stations and reviewers. A positive reaction to its contents, coupled with a good reaction to the band's opening concerts, resulted in the album generating 50,000 advanced orders. The album reached number 10 on the Billboard chart. The album earned its US Gold certification in July of '69. Yeah, wow. All of that, despite being shunned by Rolling Stone and contemporary critics and having to build up word of mouth and all of that, still getting a gold certification, just a couple of months after release. You can't be denied. It doesn't matter who doesn't like you. It doesn't matter if you don't have the support of notable people that will help you, give you a leg up or all of that sort of thing. If your shit's good and you know your value and you know your worth, you can't be denied. In the end, that's what it's really all about. Hate them if you want, despise them if you want, hate them because you can't control them, hate them because you're in denial of their talent, you don't like a single thing that they've ever done, which makes you a liar. Whatever the case is, they can't be denied because they were that damn good. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. Very brave, very strong, very bold. Boldly go. That Star Trek saying? That's boldly go where no one has gone before. Yeah, we're beating our own trail and we're going this way. I'm glad the other members had enough faith in Page to follow him. When I was in the Navy, I was watching the Thunderbirds once doing their thing. And I remember hearing this crazy story about one time some of the Thunderbirds crashed into the ground. And the leader, or the rest of the body of the formation following that leader, they will follow him into the ground. They will not break off no matter what. Even if they know that they are, they have to have known that he maybe made a miscalculation, a split-second miscalculation, and they knew that they were crashing, right? But they didn't break formation. They followed that leader, That was the craziest story I ever heard, but I understood the level of commitment to the ethic of being a formation flyer. These guys, the other bands of the other guys in Led Zeppelin, they followed Page like that, So hats off to them. Like I said, it took a lot of some very large grapefruits on the point of Page and Peter Grant to go in that direction. And also for the other guys to follow them, and allowing themselves to be led in that direction, especially being that young. What, 19, 20? Damn, man. I told you this shit is a science. I'm taking this long just because, like I said, this shit is a science to me. But where the hell was I though? Led Zeppelin was cited by Stephen Thomas Erlewine as a significant turning point in the evolution of hard rock and heavy metal. According to arts and culture scholar Michael Follen, it announced the emergence of a loud and raw new musical genre in metal, and by the BBC as a product of the 1960s whose often bombastic style signposted a new decade. Yeah, they were blazing a trail. This is good history, guys. I can't stop. I can't skip over shit. Sheldon Pierce from Consequence of Sound regarded it as Zeppelin's ode to rock's progressive metamorphosis and the first hard rock domino for their future accomplishments. How true. Its orchestration delves adventurously through hard rock and heavy metal with bluesy undertones that often cause the chords to weep poignantly as if struck with malice. Man, I could never be a music critic because my vocabulary is basically, the height of my vocabulary is like, damn, oh shit, yo, oh damn, yo. There's no way that I'd ever be a decent music critic because I gotta have a seriously complex, advanced vocab. I just don't have that. Listen to this shit again. Its orchestration delves adventurously through hard rock and heavy metal with bluesy undertones that often cause the chords to weep poignantly as if struck with malice. You gotta be a little bit of a poet too, man. That is what makes a good music critic. I get it, I admit it, I would suck at it. The album was described as a brilliant, if heavy-handed blues rock offensive by popular music scholar Ronald Zalkin. Music scholar. Martin Popoff argued that while the album may not have been the first heavy metal record, it did feature what was likely to be the first metal song, Communication Breakdown, with its no-nonsense machine gun between the numbers riffs. I was thinking that of Dazed and Confused, but I can understand why he would see Communication Breakdown as being one of the first metal songs. Okay, I'll stop here, guys, because it then breaks down even more of their accolades. You know, it was regarded as the 29th greatest album on Rolling Stone's 500 of all time. 1,000 albums you have to check out before you die, Grammy Hall of Fame, all of those great accolades about this album. So I'll stop there. I'll spare all of that reading, man. I've done too much reading, but this shit is really intriguing. And as a person who likes to say that I'm studying it as a science, yeah, I find it very, very interesting because it's kind of laying out the history. It's telling a story. It's telling me about Page, how forward-looking he was. It's telling me about his drive and his motivation, and that he was fearless in pushing forward. It tells me about the commitment of the other members, including Peter Grant, the fifth member of Led Zeppelin. It tells me that they laid a great foundational structure in order to accomplish success. They had a bulldog who was watching over them, Peter Grant. They had a forward-looking leader in the form of Jimmy Page, who had all of these crazy skills, but knew his worth also as a producer, right? You had these great individual elemental musicians who together cohesively knew that they had an incredible vibe and a sound. Not just a signature sound, but a vibe that came from it, that haunting effect. They knew all of this shit about themselves, I have no doubt. And that's why some people didn't like them. That's why some people were afraid and jealous. That's why some people hated them because they couldn't be controlled, because they weren't going to get a piece. They weren't going to get a cut. You know what I'm talking about? This read gave me all of that. Without me really being told, I could read between those lines. It gave me all of that. You know what I'm saying? This is the juice of the fiber that feeds me. This is why I find this shit so interesting. The history of rock and roll, the Renaissance period of creativity, and where these guys came along and where they etched out their part and their place in history is some intriguing shit to me, man. Let me tell you. There might be another great band that comes along that has an effect in musical history like this. We can't ever close the book and close our minds, but oh man, let me tell you, these guys definitely really spearheaded something, didn't they? And in their own right, The Who and the Beatles and the Stones, and some of those great bands, they also contributed to the entire body of modern music and classic rock. They all have their place. So let me tell you, man, fantastic. Anyway, that's enough talking on my part, guys. This is my review portion, and I'll sign off. I'll go get hydrated and sober up a little. But again, I want to get back to you guys. If you've watched me for more than one Led Zeppelin reaction, I believe that you owe me. And I think that you should owe me a testimony of what you think about Led Zeppelin, and specifically this album, and when you heard them for the first time, what your initial thoughts were. Give me that, all right? And then you can go back to being just a silent viewer or whatever the case is. But there's 20,000 of you, so I want 20,000 testimonies, all right? You owe me that, right? If you don't do anything else while you are visiting my channel, while you're a subscriber to my channel, being a subscriber to my channel also comes with a commitment. I have a commitment of providing you some decent content and a decent review and my point of view. You've followed me for a little while or a long while, you owe me that. So I'm expecting to see 20,000 testimonies, if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, of what this album specifically and what Led Zeppelin represents to you and how you felt the first time that you saw it. You owe me that, all right? So that's how I feel about that. Liquid courage, man. So going forward, just checking my notes here, I'm going to do some live stuff. Where it comes to Led Zeppelin, I'm also going to do some of the interviews and follow what they've done on their solo works. Like I recently saw that Robert Plant has been interviewed by Brian Johnson of AC/DC. Brian Johnson has his own YouTube channel, and I know that he went to visit Robert and they took a nice walk in the woods, and there's an interview there. So it's stuff like that that I want to eventually get to, and I will, so it's bits and pieces. So that's what I'm looking at doing. So the rabbit hole is still got some winding dimensions that I still haven't gotten to yet. So the Led Zeppelin journey continues pretty much. Anyways, man, the next time I do a post, it will probably be something live. I'm guessing it's Blueberry Hill, because a lot of people have been asking for that, but I've got a lot of other things that some of my subscribers and some of my patrons have sent me, so there's a lot of stuff yet to come. Anyway, thanks for indulging me, indulging my rant, indulging some of my drunken slurring, and hope you guys got something out of this, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much, actually, for a lot of you who were with me from the very get, and you let me know who you were. That was really cool to see all of these hashtags. I love that shit. So give me that again, but in a form of a testimony. Of that 20,000 subscribers, I want to see 20,000 testimonies. Tell me what you think about this album, when you first heard Led Zeppelin, or what they mean to you. You know what I'm talking about. Give it to me, all right? But don't give me a long-ass volume or a book. Just give it to me in a decent paragraph or less, and that'll be perfect. All right, have a good one. Take care. I'll see you in my next Zeppelin reaction. Peace out.